Hey guys, it's Allie. Welcome back to Infertile AF, the podcast. This is episode 76 called Wes. Okay, so I'm so excited to have another guy on the show today. And today we're talking to Wes, who is also known as Detour to Dad, which is his Instagram handle. He's been out and about in the community for a couple of years now. And today he's going to tell us about what happened when he was diagnosed with severely low sperm count. So he felt like he got punched in the throat, and he's going to talk about that and how it affected his relationship with his beautiful wife, Amanda, and how since she was checking out and not having any health problems, he ended up feeling pretty guilty and, as he says, emasculated. So it's such an interesting perspective to hear all of this from the male point of view and what it was like going through all of this. So he's going to tell us also about when they went through IVF and used donor sperm, how they chose the donor sperm, and what happened after that. So, Wes, thank you so much for your honesty. And guys, without further ado, this is Wes's infertility story. Wes, thank you so much for doing this. I've been wanting to get you on my show for a while since we did the event at Fertility Rally about male factor infertility.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, you were so great on that call. It was really helpful. We had a lot of people on with their partners, which was really cool. So, obviously this is part of the journey that doesn't get talked about too much. So before we get started with the chronology, I'd love to find out, why did you want to talk about this? Why was it so important for you to create your Instagram account and come out with this story from your point of view?
Yeah, so I think from my perspective, it was, when I was first diagnosed with, for me, it's severely low sperm count, of course. Oligospermia is the technical term for it. When I was first diagnosed with that and my wife and I were dealing with these issues, we found that there was really scarce information out there and, true perspectives from coming from the male point of view. So for me, knowing how it was kind of, you were lost on an island, so to speak, and it was very difficult to find others that were on that island with you that really were comfortable sharing their perspective. So the ones that I did find, I just remember how monumentally helpful it was for me. So to me, I felt, hey, why don't I share my story? And, if it only helps, a handful along the way, at least it helps someone. So that was kind of the motivation for me, was just putting into perspective how I felt and thinking how many others out there must feel that way, because from the male point of view, it's just a struggle to deal with the emotions and everything that comes along with it.
Completely. So when you started going through this and you were looking around for support and other people to talk to, were you coming up short? Like you just weren't finding anybody?
Yeah, it was, I found a few, Alex, one of the ones that I found that we had on the Fertility Rally event and things like that. He was definitely, probably the biggest help to me. And we still, of course, share messages and exchange messages all the time with each other on Instagram. But, finding him and really, but other than him, it was a very small list of guys out there that are really sharing their perspective. There were more medical related podcasts and whatnot that I could find that would go into detail of, the whole what to expect and all of that from this particular situation we found ourselves in. But really finding people that were really personal and upfront about it, it was very difficult to find.
Right. And so have you always been somebody who's talked about your problems pretty openly and talked about your struggles?
Oh, God, no.
No?
I've always been and that was what was so surprising about this. And I think it took me a while before I've actually made the leap because it is so different from my general persona that, that I kind of, I conduct myself as this, kind of more of the tough guy, kind of personality. That's how my dad always was around me. And I think, that definitely rubbed off to some degree. Luckily, my mom kind of helped me to to have a little bit of a softer side as well. So it was really a struggle for me to actually make that leap, because I was like, I really don't talk about this stuff that much. But at the same time, one thing that also kind of, had me jump off, from the jumping off point is that I felt, well, this could probably be very therapeutic for me also, because, at the time, I was talking about it with Amanda, but at the same time, there were still some things that I was kind of holding back. And I felt that maybe doing this would actually help me in some therapeutic way. And it has. So that was definitely another benefit, or another, kind of thing that kind of drove me to doing this.
Yeah. Isn't it funny how that happens? Because I think that most of us who are, want to come out and share our stories, we are doing it to help other people initially. But then as you get into it, you're like, oh, I'm getting a lot out of this as well. And you almost feel kind of bad, like guilty, because you're like, wait, I didn't really mean to benefit myself, but I'm getting so much out of this too.
Yeah, exactly. You're right. It's definitely a little bit of a conundrum there, where you're like, should I feel this way or not?
Right, exactly. So you've got Detour to Dad, which is your Instagram account. I'll link to everything and post it all as well, so people can follow you. And then, are you still doing the podcast?
I mean, yeah, I really need to get some episodes in, because, with COVID and everything that happened. And of course, us preparing for the arrival of the little one, that definitely has kind of consumed my life. But I really feel bad, because I'm like, man, I really want to, share more of our story, because there's been so much that's happened since then,
Right.
So yeah, I'm still doing it, and I'm definitely going to keep it up there and whatnot, but I've been really bad about doing new episodes. That's for sure.
Yeah. Well, that's okay. You can still catch up. So, okay. Spoiler alert. You guys are 33 weeks pregnant.
We are. I guess I ruined the suspense of that one.
Yeah, you really did. That's okay. So, okay, let's start at the beginning. When did you and Amanda meet? And did you guys talk about building a family in the early days, or were you just kind of dating and not worrying about that? Or how did it shake out for you guys?
Yeah. So I met Amanda playing softball in, it would have been June of 2012. And when we met, I was definitely rough around the edges, to say the least. I think I've been burned by some relationships, plus probably not acted so, nice in other relationships myself. So there was definitely some blame on both sides.
Let's hear some dirt. What did you do? You're a bad boy?
I was just kind of a rounder. I was out to have a good time, and and it was like, I knew I hadn't yet met the right person. It was kind of like, but you were in these situations where I'm sure, just like anyone, you've had relationships where it's like, why am I even in this? So, when we met, I was kind of, riding the rails of that. And, but it was something immediately about Amanda that just struck me. First and foremost, when we were playing softball, we would play against each other in a social league, and our team that we had a horrible time getting women to show up for our team. Nobody wanted to show up. So what I would do is, since they were very lenient on the roster and whatnot, I would just, I was like, hey, why don't you play with us? And so she was always down for it. She's always been somebody that's very athletic. And so, she'd play with us. And then I think it was at the time we met, I had a girlfriend at the time, and this is one of those relationships where it was going nowhere. So probably about the third or fourth time that she played with us, and I remember it vividly. We were like in the championship for the quote unquote championship for the social league.
It's a big deal. Don't sell yourself short.
Yeah. And it was so lenient that she was able to play with us even on the championship after playing earlier that day, which is funny, after her team was out of it. So, she played with us. We won the championship, and then we went for drinks later on, and it was like a bunch of us, and she actually gave me her number, and she made the first move, and I had just broken up with this other girl, so I wasn't even going to do anything about it at that time. But she made the move, and kind of the rest is history. But at the time, I definitely had some moments where I had to learn that this was something that was real, and I needed to really shape up. So, it took me a little while for that. So it took us I think we moved in together probably a year and a half after that. So, and then like, I think 3 years after that, after we met, was when we moved down here to where we currently are in South Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
And, at the time, I didn't even say where we actually met, but we were in Arlington, Virginia, just outside of DC.
Gotcha.
So if you're familiar with that area, it's very fast paced. The traffic's awful. So we really knew we needed a change of pace. So that was when we moved down here in 2015, found us a little rental, a nice little townhouse, did that for a year. And then after a year, we ended up buying our house that we're currently in. And we got married shortly after. So we bought our house in March. It seems like the more I look back on our, journey together from the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
we like to do crazy things all at once. So like we bought our house in March 2016. We barely had gotten moved in. Then we got married in May 2016.
Mm-hmm.
So, I've found that, it seems to be our MO to do everything at once
Right.
something happens. So
yeah. Okay, so you probably jumped into the having the kids portion too, then, if that tracks with how you've been going so far.
Yeah. So we got married, and it was probably a little bit before or right around the marriage. We got married that Amanda went off birth control, so we weren't going to be intensely pursuing it, but we weren't going to be holding back.
Right.
Either,
like you're
right?
not trying.
Yes, exactly. So we went, we did that for almost a year until probably about, it would have been around the April 2017 timeframe that unfortunately we found out that my mom was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. So that threw us our first curveball in this process.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah. And unfortunately, with her diagnosis and her particular form of pancreatic cancer, there's not many that are treatable, but, we were kind of holding out hope, and we kind of, I was kind of taking her to, I took her up to Johns Hopkins for a couple of visits, and, so it was, we weren't able to get any kind of real true, treatment for pancreatic cancer that was going to make a real dramatic difference. So unfortunately, we lost her in November of 2017. So yeah, that definitely threw us for a loop. And, there was no real thought of pursuing the family for quite some time, even after that. And then, I think, it was a few months later. So it was sometime in early, I think 2018 that we picked back up with trying to start a family. And we, Amanda was the first one that was really saying things about it. I was kind of naive and dumb to the fact. And I thought, it's just taking longer than it normally does. And,
sure.
It's a miracle that the process happens anyway.
Yeah. Right.
So we're like, hey, it's going to be fine. But, she kept pushing at me. And I soon realized that what she was requesting was really, it made a lot of sense. We really should go get checked out, get some, clear head and get a, clear our conscience that it's not something that's an underlying issue that we're going to have to treat medically.
Mm-hmm.
So we went, again, when we do something, we go full bore. We went straight to an RE. So we went straight to our fertility doctor, who is still our fertility doctor to this day, who is just excellent. We go for a battery of tests. Well, for me, it's not a battery of tests. It's just, do the thing in the cup and that's
exactly.
it. Yeah.
Can I ask you, sorry, before we move on, how did you find this RE? Was it somebody that friends had recommended, or just to give people who are listening, some tips on how to find one? That's
a very good question. And my wife found him. There's not many in our area. So I think we really just lucked out that we have a great clinic here in Charleston. And I think it was just a Google search. She found that he was very well regarded and, had really great reviews. So we went straight to him. Great. He has 2 or 3 other partners with him, and we've had experiences with all of them, and we can't say enough about all of them. They've been exceptional.
That's good to hear.
Yeah. So that was, that was comforting because, as when you go into this process, oh God, if you have just some stone cold doctor that really has bad bedside manner, that's really going to make this process even worse.
Absolutely. I hear from people all the time that, you know, they're like, I felt like a number. I never even met the doctor, you know, stuff like that. It's so tough already when you're going through something like this, that when you can't get the good medical care, it just piles on.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, you know, we went for that first visit and, you know, that's when Amanda had all the tests that she needed to run. They were saying, you know, on the surface, we have a couple other things we're going to do, but you look, you know, everything looks perfect. So, you know, they got back my sperm analysis and unfortunately my, you know, I think the healthy, the low end of the healthy spectrum for a sperm analysis is 15 million. I think it's 15 million sperm. Mm-hmm. My sample had, I think that particular one had just under 500,000. Mm-hmm. So I had just a fraction of what I really should have. So, you know, our doctor knew right away what it was. And so he gave us the options. And the first option he presented, he said, hey, why don't you go to see a urologist? And he recommended a guy. That's probably the only thing that looking back that he's done that I haven't agreed with, because now looking back, that urologist was kind of a kook. So he wasn't the greatest, but anyway, so we went to the urologist because he said, you know, hey, there are some things they can do to try to maybe tweak some things. And let's see what the urologist says about your sperm count. Mm-hmm. So the urologist then recommended Clomid. So I went on Clomid for, I think, 3 or 4 months.
Okay, hold on. I have never heard of a guy going on Clomid.
You never heard it?
No.
If you research it, there are very kind of edge cases where they're doing it. And I can't explain to you the science has escaped me, but there's definitely an explanation for why it can boost.
Okay, interesting.
Sperm count.
Okay,
but when you look at the results, I kind of went into that not being very optimistic about it, because when you look at the tests that have been done in the studies, it's not like it's a dramatic improvement. If I just needed just a little bit, it might have helped. But you know, turns out that really didn't do what we needed, you know, in the long run. So I think that took us into, this was now late 2018. And, you know, at that time we just decided, you know, we went back to, you know, our doctor and he said, well, you know, our only other option is IVF, because with your low sperm count, you know, mixing, you know, doing the IUI approach where you just try to put the sperm where they need to be, it's not going to be advantageous to you because of your low sperm quality anyway. Okay. So we're going to have to go straight to IVF. And
hold up 1 second, Wes. Can I ask you, just like real talk, when you first got those test results with the low sperm count, how did that make you feel?
So when I first got that, that was definitely probably the big, well, I wouldn't say the biggest blow, but one of the biggest blows. I say top 3 that we've had in this process is just hearing those results. It was really like somebody had like punched me in the throat.
Sure.
It's like, you know, and I remember that car ride, you know, just vividly on the way home. My wife and I were just it was a lot of anger, and, you know, we were just, we were actually name dropping people where we're like, this person didn't even want a child and they had a baby, and, you know, or this person had a child and they had to, you know, their parents had to take care of it.
Right.
You know, so
totally. You go through all the people that are like unfit parents and you're like, how do they get a baby and we don't? It's not fair.
Right. And it's like, we have
that too.
You know, we're financially stable. We're very responsible. Why is this happening? You know,
totally. I remember thinking that too. And I actually had to say that to my therapist at one point, because I was like, I'm a good person. Like, why is this happening to me? Like, I'm like kind to people. I recycle. Like, you know, and she was like, and she kind of set me straight and was just like, you know what? You know, bad things happen to good people and good things happen to bad people. And I was like, oh, okay. Like,
right.
You know, but you think if you do all the things and you do them all right, that you're going to have success. And with infertility, it just does not happen that way.
Nope. It's a roll of the dice. You don't know what you're going to get. Yeah.
So, okay. Well, thank you for sharing that with me. But, you know, were you feeling like less of a man, or, you know, guys want to be the provider? Like, did you feel guilt, or I'd love to dig a little bit more into that.
Yeah, I ran really the gamut of emotions, because I felt very emasculated. One, because and it's really the only thing that, I mean, sure, when you have the baby, the male side of it provides that fatherly touch to the role of parenting, but as far as the part of conception and carrying the child and everything, we really do so little in this process. So knowing that my only contribution was now, might be taken away because it's, it really set us back in terms of our odds, was really it definitely killed me. So, I'm very proud. I find myself very prideful, and it was a very difficult pill to swallow, for sure. And I really did, as you said, I really did feel guilty, because here's my wife that everything checks out perfectly. She gets an A+ scorecard. And, when you do the research and you look at the infertility space, you're like, wow, there's so many women out here that are having issues. But in our particular case, it's me that's having the issue. It's like, why couldn't have things have aligned? Because she is so healthy in terms of her reproductive health, yet I'm, kind of setting us back. So you definitely run through that guilt. It's a guilt trip, that's for sure. So
completely. And what about in terms of like telling family members or friends? Like, is that something that was hard to discuss, or did you keep it to yourself? I mean, not that you're going to go to the bar and like blast it out to like, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, it was difficult at first. For me, I definitely let my core group of friends know. I have like, probably 3 to 5 friends that I'm really close with. So, I let them know. I let my dad know. It was just him, of course, because we had already lost mom. I let him know, even though I probably shouldn't have, because he's kind of a big mouth. So I think he told several people back home without even knowing it. He's just that kind of person where it's like, well, Wes is dealing with this.
Right.
But so yeah. And I think I told my brother and my sister and maybe a couple of others, but yeah, it was definitely, I kept it reserved at first to those kind of core individuals.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Okay. So thank you for diving into all that. I really appreciate it. I know it's not easy for guys to talk about, but I really do appreciate it. So, all right, when you guys got back on, so now they're saying IVF. So tell me what happened from that point on.
Right. So we got the news that IVF was going to be our protocol going forward. We decided, hey, let's take a break. So I think that's when we went on a trip we went to Canada. We did something just to get our mind off of things. And it really was a great time to do it. We had a great time. It helped us to kind of clear things out and get ready for this.
Yeah.
So, early in 2019, we had our first egg retrieval and fertilization and transfer. And right out of the gate, the first transfer using my sperm and of course, Amanda's eggs was successful. So we were like, wow. So we're finally catching a break and this is all working out. So, we got to the point where, at our clinic, they call it graduating. I think you get past the 8th or 9th week. And then they release you, to your OB. And so we had our last ultrasound, I think the week before, then went to the OB. Now this OB was a new OB my wife had never been to for anything, for any of her checkups or anything for that matter. So just to paint the picture, I really felt so bad for this doctor. So we go in for the ultrasound, and unfortunately she can't find a heartbeat. So the first news that she had to give my wife was that she couldn't find a heartbeat. So
oh my gosh, that
was the biggest blow that we've had in this process was losing that baby. And to be honest with you, I was torn up to begin with. I was definitely the one that was breaking down, believe it or not, in the office. And my wife was very stoic and didn't really. It was like she was confused. Like, well, it was just this was just working. Like, you know, we were just so her first reaction was anger toward the doctor. And, you know, I immediately took so much, you know, I felt very sorry for the doctor. So I, you know, kind of steered her away from that. But as soon as she got home, she broke down, and that was the hardest thing to watch.
Right.
Yeah.
Because it sounds like it was a complete blow. Like you guys weren't expecting that, right? It was like, oh, we've already gone through all the hard stuff and now we're pregnant, smooth sailing from here on out. And then boom.
Right. Yeah. We weren't like thinking that was going to happen at all. Of course, no one is going into that. Right. So, you know, she had to have a DNC, and that's something I hope I never have to watch her go through again, because that moment after having that done in the office there was probably her lowest point. And, you know, I'm a protector, and I hate to see her that way. And that was the worst part of this whole process was watching that. But, you know, to her credit, she is a fighter, and she's told people this before. She thought, if I don't continue on this process, like pretty much immediately, as soon as I can, then I might not ever do this again.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You know, so she, you know, we were right back at it. I can't recall, you know, how long we had to wait for that next transfer, but we went through that transfer, and then we went through another transfer. So that was our third transfer. And unfortunately, those were the only 3 embryos we got out of that first round with my sperm. So, you know, that then led us to the next step. And that was, you know, hey, let's see what else we can do to try to boost my, not really boost, but see how they can get a better quality sample from me. And so the next step that was suggested to me, and there was a urologist that was working, this was a new urologist, which I like much better. He's now my urologist. That was he had partnered up with our clinic, and so he was working in the office there, and he was doing sperm aspiration procedures right there out of the office. So that was the next thing. And he told me, you know, he said, we're going to do this, and we'll do, you know, the usual sperm aspiration procedure, but if I'm not able to get a good sample, then I'll make an incision and I'll go in there and take a biopsy and see what kind of sample I can get from that perspective. So I was like, sure, I'm willing to do whatever we think could potentially, and they thought they could get a better sample from that process. So that was it. We were set to move forward with that. So what would happen is on that particular round is the day before Amanda would have her egg retrieval, they would do the sperm aspiration procedure on me, and then they would have those sperm frozen and then ready to go for the next day for the retrieval. Okay. And that's kind of how that process would work. So I went in and had that procedure. Lo and behold, he couldn't get a very good sample from just trying to draw it with the needle. So he actually did make the incision and went to get the biopsy and everything. And so we go in the next day. So, you know, I've already been cut open down there.
Was it painful?
Well, yes. It was a weird, God, yeah, it wasn't so much the cut, the incision. It just felt like a deep pain, like ache. And it was, I had that for days. Yeah. I could not, like, walking. I had to walk so gingerly. I looked like an 85-year-old man that, you know, could barely even get around. So I had to actually drive Amanda in for the retrieval. Yeah. Of course. So here I am, I'm like, oh, you go ahead. You go on ahead. You know, just like a, you know, old grandfather that's making his way into. So, but yeah, so we're gingerly walking in. So her retrieval goes great. I can't remember the count, but we had, I think, just as many eggs retrieved for that round. So that was great. Again, she's A+. But, you know, there's Wes, you know, his contributions usually, you know, a little skeptical. So they tell me right after the retrieval that I'm sorry, but the sample we got really wasn't even, it was about as good as they already had, in frozen
Oh, wow.
sperm that they have for me. So, I look back on it with, looking at it in a couple ways. One way, I'm a little frustrated because I'm like, wait a minute, you cut me open.
Yep.
Like, this did nothing.
Yep.
And on the other side, and it took Amanda kind of coercing me to think like this, but she's like, at least now, you won't be thinking, what if I'd have done this?
Right. It does eliminate the what ifs and you've tried kind of everything, but still they cut you open.
Right. Exactly. So I was like, look at this. Like, I could barely walk. I look like a 95-year-old man. Come on now.
Yeah.
But so anyway, so they still left a little hope. They said, listen, they're still they have to put some kind of solution on them, because when they take them directly from the testicle, you have to wake them up, so to speak, to see if they'll swim. So they're like, they're still in the solution. We'll know within like 30 minutes what kind of true sample we're going to have. So we had taken ourselves on down the road, and I had stopped to get Amanda a prescription. And, as I'm coming out of the grocery store or the pharmacy, I can hear that my Bluetooth is on in my truck, and Amanda's talking to someone. And sure enough, I open the door and hop in, and it's our RE, and he's telling us the results. And unfortunately, it was, he said it really wasn't that great of a sample. So, he gave us the options. He said, we can continue to move forward with your sperm, see how that shakes out, or we can go with donor sperm. So leading up to this, the idea of donor sperm was something that, believe me, took a lot of coming around to. But, initially I was so against it. Amanda mentioned it to me, and I said, no, we'll adopt before we do that. And I mentioned, Alex earlier, his, one of the podcasts that he was on was one of the ones that had me really start to think about this a little differently. Like, just because this isn't my genetics, I don't share genetics with this child. It will most certainly be my child if we pursue this route. So, the gears were starting to go, and I was definitely coming around to it. And it was something about that moment, that I just got this moment of clarity, like, I can't even explain. And it was like all these things just kind of came into my thought process. And I just pictured Amanda going through this again if we, used my sperm. So, immediately I was like, we're going to go with a sperm donor.
Wow.
And, and it was like, I think it shocked Amanda, and she was like, okay. So, Dr. Schnorr said, hey, I completely agree. I think you're doing the best possible thing you can to put yourself in the best position for success. So, that was that. So we were going to go forward with using a donor.
Yeah. Well, let's talk. I can't remember on the call. I was taking notes when we did our event that it was either you or Alex, and we should give a plug to his Instagram too. It's Pursuing Fatherhood. So he was, I can't remember you or him, but one of you said, grieving the loss of your genetics and saying goodbye to your genetics. And I thought that was
I wish I could take credit for that, but I got that from him. Yeah, okay. Definitely. So,
but
so if I said it, I just stole it from him. So.
I love that you selflessly were like, I can't see Amanda going through this loss again. Right. So,
right.
First of all, kudos for being such a good husband and for thinking that way. But tell me about the thought process of, your genetics are now going to be removed from the situation. How did that feel? And how did you come to terms with it even more as you guys moved along in the process?
Yeah. And I mean, putting it that way is the perfect way to put it. The loss of your genetics. It's a loss. It's a mourning process, just like losing a family member or a friend. You really, you have to come to grips with the fact that, hey, this is just not in the cards, because from a very early age, men are kind of conditioned to, you're going to carry the bloodline. I guess it comes from just the primitive way of thinking, just, eons ago, where it's like, this son has to carry the bloodline, carry the name. So, you think from that perspective, and you're like, man, there's, this child truly won't be carrying the bloodline along from my perspective, right? Like, it won't have my genetics, but then you're kind of thinking, well, wait a minute, there's other attributes and qualities that a child has besides their genetics, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, this child could essentially, carry a lot of the traits and attributes that I have, from physical characteristics to mannerisms to things like that,
Mm-hmm.
things that are learned through, the development and growth of the child. So, I started to think more from that perspective, like this child may not be part of my genetics, but this child will be 100% of me because the child is 100% of Amanda, has 100% of Amanda. Right.
Right.
And that was the perspective that I was coming from, was that the child is genetically part of her, and due to the close bond and the relationship we have and whatnot, that child would be, just as close to me because of that. So that was kind of what I had come to the grips about through this process. But initially I was so hard-headed about it. So it definitely took some time, and even after making that decision, because one thing I didn't mention about that decision that really kind of put us under the gun was that recall that Amanda's eggs had just been retrieved, so they were just sitting there, and we needed to make a decision quick because they had to get them on ice, get them frozen if we were going to do that. So I think that probably helped. It didn't hurt, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, it definitely did. Led to a moment of clarity that really helped me to see the true situation here, the true value that using a donor would bring for our journey and what it could do for success. So,
right.
All those factors, it was always like a combination of things at once that just, really opened my eyes. But after that, and even today, I mean, I still have times where, there's definitely a little bit of a sad feeling where you're thinking back and you're like, man, I wish it could have worked, and then, totally. I could have potentially, contributed to this pregnancy, in terms of my genetics, but
right.
You can't dwell on those things. It's one of those things where you just have to, you take your time to mourn, you take your time to go through the motions and do what you need to do for you, because everyone's going to handle this differently. Right. But once you feel like you're ready to move forward, you need to move forward. That's the only way that you can get through this journey of infertility is, you can't stay still because it'll consume you.
So tell me about the process of choosing the donor.
Yeah, so that's an interesting process. Anyone that's ever gone through it, kudos. You've gone through the same thing, and I'm sure the same motions that we did. I liken it to kind of a dating app, but for genetic material
for your future child.
Unquote. Yeah, exactly. So you go on there, and some profiles will have adult pictures, some profiles won't. Some donors will be anonymous. Some will choose to be contacted in the future if the child wants to. For us, I think we wanted someone that was anonymous. It wasn't that we do not have any plans of hiding it from the child. We just thought that might complicate things for the child if they are able to reach out, and then, then who do I call my dad if I reach out to this person, and what do I do? So we felt it best to go for an anonymous donor. So that's essentially what we did. We started focusing our search on anonymous donors. That was kind of out of the gate what we wanted to do. So we started looking at some of these anonymous donors, and the ones with, it's funny, the ones with adult pictures, I judged so much. And so I was like, well, I think maybe we should confine it to just ones with child pictures.
Right. So wait, let's tell people that might not know. So some of them, they do provide adult photos, like you said, and some are just kind of baby photos. So you don't really see what they look like as an adult, which the whole thing is just, it's a little bit bizarre.
It's very bizarre.
But I totally understand the judging thing. And it's funny, I was interviewing this woman, Ashley, who had a sperm donor. She's a single mother by choice. And she was saying, like some of them were like, he looks like Brad Pitt, or, they have a celebrity that they kind of compare them to.
Yep.
And she was like, should I get the hot one? Like, why wouldn't I choose the hot one? I'm going for like the best of every other part of his personality. I want the smartest and the healthiest. Like, why shouldn't I want the hottest? And she's like, I felt kind of guilty about it. But then I was like, if I'm paying for this sperm, like I'm going to choose the hot one.
Right.
And
Right.
I thought that was really eye-opening.
Yeah. It seems like every one of them, they do that where they find some celebrity they look like. And I want to know whose job that is, like who's doing that, because some of these, I mean, just from the child picture perspective,
Right.
like I don't know if that child could have grown up to become, look like that.
Because it's always some really hot movie star, right? They're never like,
right.
like Gary Coleman or like something weird, like.
Yeah. So yeah, it's very interesting. So you go through the profile, you sign up for your subscriptions, which anyone that's doing this, don't balk on that. That's definitely a very valuable thing because it gets you all the information you need for this process. And one of the things I've been thinking of is just, how much you become, and I guess a way to put it is a student of the struggle, right? So like when you go into these, the infertility world and you start on these journeys, you start like, at least I did. I mean, I feel like this is probably a common thing, but you just dive into the information. You just want to know everything you can. And going through this process is no different. And in fact, even much more important because this is going to be the genetic material that you use to start your family, right?
Right.
So we did the whole thing. We went through, countless interviews because they do have interviews. We scoured through health records because they share those. We scoured through family history of health and just, at first my wife had it was really cute that she thought that she was going to find somebody to look just like me. And I think she was doing that to appease me because she saw how upset I was that, we had to go down this road anyway,
right.
That our hand was forced. But as we got in there and started doing that, it became, immediately apparent that is not going to happen. It's not, it's just not something that's realistic.
Right. So, do you have a celebrity lookalike, Wes?
I don't know. I don't think I've ever been told that I look like a celebrity, okay. But anyway. So yeah, so we started working through the process. I created a spreadsheet, which Alex, it's funny, we've kind of developed a bond, and he's the same way. It seems he did the same thing. I think one way we differed in terms of our journey to find a donor is that he took like as long as you possibly can. For us, it was kind of like it just happened. Like we found, I think we got down to like a list of maybe 5 that we really liked, and we started digging in and we found something about this one and we were like, no, this one's got to go. There's some kind of genetic trait that we were afraid could potentially react with Amanda's genetics based on what we know. And so we'll scratch that one off. So we got down to, I think 3, and it's something that never struck us, but the donor that we actually chose, his child photo was in a baseball uniform. So it was just like
perfect,
perfect thing for us because our foundation of our relationship was, playing softball together. So, that's the one we went with. And so that was that. You basically on the, break out your credit card, sign. I think you have to sign some papers electronically, and there you go. And I think they shipped them in like pretty much Amazon Prime speed. So
yeah, exactly.
In like 2 days at the clinic.
Science is so cool.
Oh, I know. It's amazing. So yeah, this whole process has just amazed me. What can be done.
Yeah. All right. So what happened next? So you've got everything you need.
Yep. So we got everything we need. So I think that was around the Christmas season. I think it was almost Christmas Day, really. I think that we purchased our donor sperm, and we set out and did our fertilization. I think they did that immediately, of course, and then transfer we set for I think January. So that would have been January of this year. So we did that transfer, and well, I guess before I say that, during the fertilization process, one thing that was kind of like, it was really cool because it was an immediate justification to me that what we did was the right decision. I told you earlier, we had 3 embryos that came out of our fertilization process before. I think we ended up with, something like 12 embryos out of this one.
Wow.
And most of them are high quality. So that was kind of like an immediate reflection back to that decision.
Yes.
And
you could have a full baseball team.
I was like, wow, okay. So yes, my sperm seems to have been an issue. So,
oh man.
So that was really good to get that, because it really made, kind of, it wasn't that it was a weight on my shoulders, but you're still thinking, you're like, did we make the best decision?
Mm-hmm.
And that was kind of the, immediate, just kind of, we got that clarification or that confirmation that what we did was the best thing. So yeah, so we did everything was all well and good with fertilization. We had our embryos, we transferred the first, and lo and behold, that embryo was successful. So we are now pregnant and 33 weeks pregnant.
Yes. That's so awesome. So do you know the gender of the baby?
We do. It is a boy.
Okay.
The name's already picked out.
Yes.
So he's monogrammed. Everything is monogrammed. So the child will never, not know what his initials are.
Okay, hey again. Thank you guys so much for listening. I just wanted to remind you, if you haven't already and you have 2 seconds, you can go to the Apple Store and rate and review this podcast. It really helps with the algorithm and helps us get noticed, and then more people can hear these stories and feel less alone. So thanks again to Wes and Amanda, and I will talk to you guys soon.